Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Pod Save Chocolate. My name is Clay Gordon. I'm your host and moderator, and I'm also the creator of thechocolatelife.com. Before we jump into today's episode with returning guest Volker Lehmann, I want to me, or did we just lose my video? I'm back. Okay. Volker, are you there?
Yeah,
Okay, in the
yes,
background. Yeah. So for some reason, my Wi-Fi just hit a tweak. But anyway, it is live, as you can tell, and everybody. What I want to do is I want to bring on stage Volker Lehmann, who, despite all appearances to the contrary, is not in New York City at the moment. You're back in Santa Cruz de la Sierra in Bolivia. Welcome, Volker. It's always a pleasure to see and talk with you. And I'm sad we didn't get a chance to see each other in person at the most recent Chocoa. So in the year or so since the last time we got together, what's up with cacao in Bolivia?
Yeah, Clay, always great to talk to you, and I'm very pleased to be on your show again. Yeah, I've been to the Chocoa, and it was very interesting to see how also the Bolivian cacaos, as we have like two very distinct versions of cacao in Bolivia, which not every country has. The wild and the farmed Trinitarios, and both strains made a silver medal this year at the Cocoa of Excellence Awards, which everybody is very pleased in Bolivia. I saw already somebody on the news tonight or last night from the government, and they are very pleased, even though they never help anybody, but they are very interested in
they're happy to take credit. They're happy to take credit for it, even if they don't.
And they got the credit without putting a dime. And but anyways, being in the news and receiving awards that draws back good memories, as we were a long time ago together in Bolivia pushing for fine flavor cacao, and I was in the forefront of Cocoa of Excellence starting in 2009, bringing wild and hybrid cacao to from Bolivia to the world. And surprisingly, at the very first, we won like three first awards. And our neighboring countries were very surprised because most people think Bolivia has no cacao. There are only llamas and potatoes.
And coca, right?
And of course coca.
Yeah. So I want to, if I can, just present a little bit of context. So I first learned about the wild cacao of Bolivia. So it would have been in the summer of 2006 at the World Pastry Forum. And it was the first time that I saw the Cru Sauvage, which was manufactured by Felchlin, right? And I still have memories of that being like the single best bar of chocolate I have ever eaten, or in my history as a chocolate critic. And I still had this, at the time, number one is like Bolivia, who knew Bolivia had cacao, number one. But number two, there was this notion of what made wild cacao, right? And how is it different? And we think of like the Cacao Boliviano, and what does that mean with respect to Alto Beni? And I know we don't want to go into a long-winded geographic description of what's going on, but what I did want to say, here is a map of Bolivia. I just want to get people together. And by the way, the link to this is in today's post, so you don't necessarily need to look really closely at this. You can follow along later on. But this is Bolivia overall. You're currently down here in Santa Cruz de la Sierra. People can think about it. La Paz is up here. You travel north into the South Yungas, into the Alto Beni, and where the Hacienda Tranquilidad is way over here in the east near the Brazilian border. So I'm going to do a little close-up. Can you give me an idea of roughly where, what the difference is between the wild cacao of Bolivia and the farmed varieties, which we're talking about? right? And where they grow, what the difference is.
Yeah, in a nutshell, farmed cacao basically uses varieties which were improved, by man. They were drafted, crossbred, and whatnot, and they belong to the international genetic strains that are also produced in Ecuador, in Peru, and in Colombia, and so on, all over the Americas, which are in the tropics and can produce cacao.
If I can, these might be names like ICS, Imperial College Selection, right, which
yes.
are known coming out of the gene bank in Trinidad.
Exactly.
Right?
Most of them are Trinitarios, which are a mix of the former Criollo and Forastero strains, and they vary quite significant in their genotype, in the colors, in their taste, and so they were selected for Alto Beni. And now I come to the geography, and Alto Beni means up the river of the Rio Beni. Yeah, so
we're looking at this region here.
Yeah, exactly. And to be very precise, this belongs to the La Paz department, not to the Beni department, and that makes it for outsiders a little tricky to understand that the Alto Beni means the upper part of the Rio Beni in the La Paz department, and these are in the foothills. These are totally different soils, foothills, valleys, and the altitude where these cacao grow is between 400 and 800 meters. That would be less than 1,200 feet, about max. And the Beni is actually a department and named after the river that cross-sects into the Rio Madre de Dios and finally goes to Manaus and into the Amazon. And this Rio Beni is 800 kilometers. And it would take us like 3 days travel from Rurrenabaque to Riberalta. And it's a vast swamp plain with forests, and there you find the wild Beniano. The wild Beniano, of course, is not farmed. It's a strain of a unique variety which is endemic to Bolivia in the forest, and it was seeded mostly by monkeys, by animals. Most of it. Men also contributed, and of course, because they like the cacao. It's very sweet. It has a very high grade of sugar, over 22 bricks. And as you have tasted it, it is marvelous to drink a cup of that juice. That is one of the. It's really thick. It's very thick and very sweet. And so,
no, I still have memories of the visit I did to the Hacienda Tranquilidad in January of 2010, where I spent the morning with a family harvesting. And one of the things they did is they put all the beans into a bag, and they let the juice drip into a little depression on the forest floor. And we took a cacao pod and scooped out the center and used it as the cup to drink. It's like one of the greatest culinary experiences in my life is just that opportunity that morning.
Yeah, it's very sweet. It's very distinct also from the Trinitario or hybrid cacaos. It's much sweeter, and the big difference, and that is also characteristic. The beans are very small. They are one of the smallest cacao beans there are. Talking about Theobroma cacao, of course. And they are half the size. That means you need 160 to 170 beans to meet 100 grams. Whereas the hybrids, they can go under 80 beans or even less if you take the new varieties like CCN 51, where one bean is like 2.5 grams. And so that would be like 50 beans then for 100 grams. And that is very distinct. And no human has ever improved or selected a certain local ecotypes of the wild to plant them in the sense of improving yields or any of the taste characteristics. So this makes them wild for me, even though some people say they are feral. But that is only the description of how they grow. Hacienda Tranquilidad has about 350 hectares of wild cacao stands, where we talk about over 100 trees per hectare, which are distributed by nature and by competition amongst themselves. We don't make any agronomic improvement. We don't prune, we don't cut, we don't fertilize. We just go into the harvest season when there are the the pods are ready to pick, and this is where you participated, and you had that fun also with the mosquitoes. I recall.
Always a lot of fun with mosquitoes. And for people who may wonder, this is actually a photo I took. I think it's the afternoon that I arrived, the evening, the first sunset that I arrived at the Hacienda Tranquilidad. So, I mean, I cannot explain to people, when you think about the savanna of Bolivia, it's very, very similar in some respects to the Pantanal of Brazil, in the sense that for most of the year during the dry season, it's very dry, but when it rains, the entire place floods. And the Hacienda Tranquilidad is on something called the chocolatale, which is a man-made island in the middle of the Bolivian savanna, which, when you come to think about it, is just mind-boggling, right, in terms of what's going on.
The forest is man-influenced. The island as such is a little higher. It's like 1.5 meters higher than the floodplain, and it has to do with the soil. The soil is not that soft, and so it doesn't erode, or it never eroded at the time. Okay. And Tranquilidad is an archaeological site, and so you see that these forests were managed by man hundreds, maybe thousands of years, and they are still intact. And of course, these people love the cacao for whatever reason, not knowing nothing about the chocolate yet. That was given, the knowledge that was given by the Jesuit priests when the colonial time started in the 1800s.
Mm-hmm. So, Volker, what I want to do is I want to jump from this background and this overview. But first, before we do it, I want to give a quick shout out to Mark and Yuri at Blue Spruce Chocolate in Kittredge, Colorado. Say thank you very much to both of you. And then also to Chef Jeffrey Gardner, who's in Los Angeles, working this morning, listening in the kitchen. Thank you both for doing a quick shout out. If you're watching, go into the comments, let us know where you're connecting from. We will certainly get you up on screen. But if you have a question about anything that Volker is saying about Cacao Boliviano, not quite clear, the work that he's doing in Hacienda Tranquilidad and other places, please, let's go ahead. Get your questions into the comments, and I'll get Volker to answer them for you. So, Volker, let's talk about, I think where I want to begin is HCP1. So for people who are not familiar with the Heirloom Cacao Preservation Fund and the Heirloom Cacao Preservation Project, let's talk about HCP and the fact that congratulations, we're the 10th anniversary of your being awarded this designation, and you're the first one. So let's talk, how does this all work, and what is it meant for Tranquilidad to be an HCB designee? What has it meant for you?
Oh, look, at the time, it came to me out of the blue. I was working in Tranquilidad, and at the same time, I was building a new a wet harvest center to get fresh beans to ferment them together with a Danish company, Tom's, and and I was approached by HCP, and they said, we would like to have one of your cacaos, that makes the Cru Sauvage. And I said, oh, okay, why not? But I don't have any beans at the moment. So a friend in Australia from Sococo, D. Morgan, sent a sample to HCP, and I told Dean, when you send the Tranquilidad beans, why don't you send also a sample from the Alto Beni, from the hybrid cacao we are just doing with Tom's? And he said, yeah, okay. I sent another sample, and HCP got it wrong because I wanted to be that Tranquilidad would be HCP number 1. And it ended up that the Alto Beni ended up number 1 and Tranquilidad number 2. And that was quite funny. But in the end, when I went to New York and they gave me the award in 2014, you were there, right?
Yep.
You were there, and I was so humbled. It was for me out of the blue. I was not expecting anything like this. And I can say something like this would never happen in Europe, never. For a farmer producer of beans to be awarded for the product, that is something totally new at the time, very special, very, very special. And I think it is worthwhile in do the anniversary. And I did a little bit of a job last year. I made a very special batch of 600 kilos, which is going into auction by the end of the month, and on a very special day on the 29th of February. Yeah, we can talk about this later, maybe a little bit.
Well, I wanted to let people know there is information. It just hit social media, LinkedIn and Instagram this morning, so it's not in the post. But I will add the links to today's post. So if you're interested in following on, perhaps registering for the auction, so anybody will be able to do that. I just wanted to just jump in there and show people that it was there.
It's a bit of giving back something to HCP, because we will split proceeds, and I want to give something back to HCP what they gave me like 10 years ago, and so it's something very special for everyone. And it will be the very first auction of cacao, as I can recall, at least in the US. It's not for the fine flavor sector. FCIA never had something like this. Nobody had it before, and I think what we want.
I need to interject there, because there were a number of years, at least 2 and maybe 3, where we did live auctions of cocoa on the floor of Chocoa. We did Cacao of Excellence winners at Chocoa.
I said US.
In the US. Yes, in the US. I would agree with you. When you're limited to
the
US.
I know. I was part of the Cocoa of Excellence team and made also the criteria when I was working with Biodiversity International. So I know exactly. And so for the US, it's absolutely new. And it's and the idea is that more fine flavor cacao, specialty cacao, go into auction every year. That is actually, it's the initial, and I hope that many of the HCP's designates come forward and do something and build up HCP. Because we are HCP. The farmers, the producers of the cacao are HCP. We have to build it up, and that is something I would like to stress on, and I'm very pleased that this worked out after 2 years of planning, and it's not something like you set up in a month or so. So yeah.
No,
Okay.
it is definitely. So what I want to do now, just as a quick reset, remind everybody that you're watching Pod Save Chocolate. My guest today, Volker Lehmann of the Hacienda Tranquilidad, best known for his work at the Hacienda Tranquilidad. He's a much more complex, much more well-rounded individual than just what's going on at the Hacienda. But I also want to remind everybody, go into the comments, let us know where you're connecting from. If you have a question for Volker, put it into the comments. I'll get the question asked and answered. And to remind everybody that this episode, like every episode of Pod Save Chocolate, is sponsored by the members of the Chocolate Life. If you're not a member, go over there and join. So what I want to do, Volker, now, if we can, because you and I, had an extended back and forth about this. What I want to do is I want to talk about something which in some segments of the world is fairly controversial. But because it's controversial just because the way many organizations have implemented them. But we have this thing, there's a link, this is from today's post, called the Cacao Forest Renovation, right? And this is tied to a carbon credit program. And I think that one of the things which is I've learned about this carbon credit program is that you're able to connect it back to an individual farmer, an individual location, which is sometimes really hard to do. So, I mean, you've been working in Bolivia for more than 20 years. You've pioneered a lot of stuff. So can you let us know about what's going on, number one, with carbon credits and what's unusual about the way you're going to be implementing them in Bolivia?
Yeah. This is actually one of the things I would like to bring forward at your show. The carbon credit is only a tool within a wider concept of what we call the traceability and the sustainability. Actually, what we want is sustainability. From the buyers of the cacao side to the consumer, to the farmers, and everybody within the chain of production. Yeah, and there's a lot of discussion how the chain is actually paying each and every link within the chain, and we know that the farmers get the least out of the final product price. As we have now also discussion about saving the forest, what can agroforestry do for climate or against climate change or mitigate climate change? So we as a producer are forced also by law from the European Union that cacao should come from non-deforested areas. And so you see, it's a very complex task, and many players, stakeholders are involved. There are funds, there are certifying organizations, and so on. And so I tried to assess what is going on, and this was one of the big reasons why I went to Chocoa. I was sitting at the World Cocoa Foundation conference where they were talking about climate change and carbon credits and the voluntary market and so on. And it was something struck me. After 20 years, they still don't know how to do it. It's something that is not clear. How to assess the impact, how to monitor also carbon capture. And there are many competing projects, and it reminded me so much of the time when the organic movement started in the 70s, 80s. So everybody thought, we need organic food, and we should not damage the soils and keep the environment intact, and so on and so on. And then all of a sudden, then there were certifying bodies and the system, and we had a lot of talks, Clay, about this. How much is actually the impact? And I see something repeating. There is something repeating, and as you know, the organic market is not making more than 10%, 15% of the entire food market, and there it is stuck. And this is happening with the carbon credit as well. And we are not speeding up. I was asking the panel at the World Cacao Foundation meeting, when and how, what is your idea of speeding up? Because the climate is changing within the next 20, 30 years, even more. And if we can speed up on the ground and bring something back to the farmers so that they can preserve the soils, the forests, their agroforestry systems, I see that we are losing time. We are losing so much time. And satellite imaging is one of the best tools you can use. And so each and every person can actually see what I do in Tranquilidad. It's almost live. You know, they see that I preserve the forest. And it's not fair that I never get anything of the ecosystem services. This is what we call it, you know, saving the water, saving the climate, producing oxygen, and so on and so on. We never get compensated for nothing like this. So it is something that the world community takes for granted. And on the other side, you see a lot of promotion of agriculture industry that gets subsidized by whatever means. It could be diesels, or it could be direct subsidized for overproduction. So actually, everything is upside down. You know, we are not giving the small farmers what they need to survive, and we want them to produce carbon capture within the agroforestry system. We want them also to produce healthy food, and we don't pay them for it. That's my conclusion. And
yeah, so I think if I can, what I want to do is I want to put a pin in it and say that we have, if you know, traceability is a component of reaching a more sustainable system, right? And the notion of being able to quantify carbon capture, carbon sequestration, right, is another component aspect of this larger sustainability effort that we're going through, and that there is a traceability element to the carbon credit, because you need to know where the farm is, you need to know what the baseline is. So for example, if you want to be able to quantify how much carbon you're sequestering, you sort of need to know, you know, what the organic matter component of the soil is in your farm, right? So that over a certain number of years, you can say, yes, we've managed to be able to capture so much carbon and put it in the ground, so it's not going. And these, you know, and we're expecting the farmers to pay for this. How does that make sense at all? And I think that's where the fundamental challenge that the World Cocoa Foundation has. I mean, it's an industry trade group, right? And its goal is to promote the industry, and there is this direct at odds relationship. I mean, these big companies are required by their corporate charters to minimize the cost of their ingredients, right? And so they're not allowed, right, to be able to spend all this money, right, because their shareholders would kick them out, or the market would punish them. And so there's this really, really complex, you know, economic and political dance, I think is the best way, right, to go and describe it. And I'm sort of, you know, curious as to how, you know, the particular project that you're working on in Bolivia is addressing those kinds of issues. So, you know, technically, you know, what are you doing and how are you reporting it, and where does the money come from that eventually comes back to pay for all of this?
Yeah. Okay. The forest I manage is in a tendency degrading through climate change. So I am affected by climate change.
So it's this area. It's this area here on the map.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I see certain tree species disappearing and others appearing which were never there before. So there is a change, even though I don't do anything. And that is caused by climate change. You know, we have less rain, and so the nature favors certain trees that can survive under these new conditions. And cacao is affected as well. I have a decline of about 50% in harvest volume over the last 10 years. And I'm not compensated for this, but because I never caused it, you know. And the carbon credits could you know, do something in the right direction. And there is no other mean. Everything is now valued on CO2, even though CO2 is not the most influential gas on climate change. It's methane and others. But CO2 is now the value, is now the money, the currency. And even Mars, they have their net zero footprint goal within 30 years. They have to be net zero. So there is a pressure on this. And if they don't do it, they will run out of cocoa. And as we see, as we speak, cocoa is now 50%, 80% higher. It's $5,500 a ton from $3,200. And this incidence could happen more and more. And this is the fear of the big companies. And then you can talk to your shareholder and say, okay, I'm sorry, but we missed the rain. The rain is just not coming. And then they say, okay, well, so if we don't, as an industry in itself, and also coffee and other industries have the same problem. It's not me in this little forest in the Amazon, Bolivian Amazon. So I'm a little a kernel of sand within the entire system. But everybody experiences the same. So we should find tools, mechanisms to make it easier. Because as we speak, there are tools now which weren't there 20 years ago. With your phone, I could assess my forest with an app. Yes, with your phone, my phone, any phone, right? And I could assess exactly the situation in my forest and can post it. Also to a bank where we could work with mega data like blockchain and feed really into the system and make it transparent to everybody. And we are just this far away from making it, but there is a political, the political will is not there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I would say it's the market will that's not there. I mean, if the market decided that it was important, the political will would follow. I mean, I'm very, very much that way. But I haven't. So a little clarity. So my understanding is that in the late 1970s, the price of cocoa was about $4,700 a metric ton, right? And it closed. The futures price closed earlier this week. I was on a BBC program at like 5,900 pounds a metric ton. So really high, but adjusted for inflation, $4,700, in the late 70s was a lot more than 5,000 pounds is now. So we need to be careful about that aspect of things. But my question is, how much of the increase in the market price is actually making its way all the way down back to you? I mean, are you now able to charge a lot more for your cocoa? It was always in the specialty market, right? So this is the thing that I think is really, really confusing to people, or one of the things that's really confusing to people about the current price.
No, the problem is with the big companies. Basically, they fixed the price in Africa, and it's about 3,000, paid to the government, and the farmer gets 1,800, right? But there is a 30% less production. So even though they get a little bit more money, but in the end they lose of the volume, and that is a problem for the big companies, because they need to assure the volume, and it's not so much the price. And now, if they want to buy volume, they have to go and buy very high. And that is scary for sweet companies like Mars, where they make only pennies on the product, and they compete with other top sweet producers like Nestle and so on and so forth, or Hershey's, and they have a problem. They cannot produce a cheap sweet stuff for the market, all the candies. We are talking about real chocolate here, Clay.
Yeah. Well, so one of the ways I talk about this, just for people to know. So if I'm a big industrial chocolate confectionery producer, like Mars, for example, Cadbury, Mondelez, we'll just pick them. What they've done is they've automated their production to the point where they are really, really sensitive to the cost of ingredients, because they can't actually become more efficient in their manufacturing processes. And so it turns out that the cost of ingredients is just really, really throws them off. If they want to change their cost of manufacturing, what they have to do is they have to fire people. They have to change their labor. One of the things which is interesting about a specialty chocolate maker, and I'm going to use specialty chocolate, basically, if you have specialty beans, you make specialty chocolate from them. It's like the specialty coffee world. I mean, it's a good analogy. If I'm a specialty chocolate maker, so like I'm Blue Spruce in Colorado, or I'm like Marsata in California, which is where Chef Gardner is from, that my costs of labor, right, are higher, and so I'm a little less sensitive to the cost of ingredients. Right. So I have room to play with labor. So I think it's really important to understand how this balance plays out in the marketplace.
Yeah. Now, for the specialty market and fine flavor cacao, it's not so important. It's more on the 85% of the volume of the 4.5 million tons, which go into sweet industry, and that is a total different cup of tea.
Let's ask this question, if I can. How much of
one thing? I'm sorry.
No.
One thing. The mechanism in organic certification is that you ask a higher price on the final product, and so the consumer will pay the extra work, which then triggers down to the farmer. And they try to do it the same with the carbon credit. And this is not working, because Mars and all these big companies, their margins per product are so low that they can't raise the price, and it would be actually a misunderstanding that the consumer in the end always has to pay for a better environment, where the companies are destroying the environment and using with their externalities, and the taxpayer is paying also the reforestation programs, the climate change programs, the global environmental facilities. The consumer is already paying the damage control. And so it would be a joke of the century if the carbon pollution is double paid by the taxpayer. First of all, he has to pay the damage and a higher price for the product. You know that.
Right. So what I want to point out to everybody is that last week, I believe it was last week, we did an episode here of Pod Safe Chocolate about regenerative agriculture. And that's actually one of the things we talked about on that episode, if you're interested in a much deeper discussion. And then also a little while ago, actually it's in December, I had a conversation with Anthony Fountain about the EUDR. Here it is. Oh, and Volker, you'll recognize this photo. Right, I think. So this is on the road on the way from Yucumo to Rurrenabaque. You're looking at the Pilo and Lajas in the back there. So I wanted to talk about that. But if you're interested in these issues around the EUDR and these issues around the impact of agroforestry and things like that, there have been recent episodes of The Chocolate Life where we talk about that, and you can go and find them. They're all here.
Okay.
I wanted to talk about that. So, Volker, if I can, really, really briefly, what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit again about this, cacao forest renovation project and something you called the Theobroma Foundation. I realized I don't have. Oh, I do have the link here. Let me do this. I do have a link. So, this is a project you've been working on for some time. It's a GoFundMe. So tell, if you can, a little bit about what this project is all about, this GoFundMe.
My status at the moment, I'm a farmer, and to generate funds or make something practical, roll out activities on the ground to safeguard the chocolatales, the cacao forest in the Itenes. I thought I would need a foundation, and Tranquilidad is part of that foundation, because I can see my life horizon also coming, where I'm not so active anymore, and I think a foundation would be a good idea, for the future to come. And what I'm aiming at is to have an organization on the ground that can actually manage funds and activities in the Itenes region. We are talking about 20 to 30,000 hectares of wild cacao stands that should be safeguarded for the future. And that is my, heart bleeding lifetime project.
Well,
and this
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that I would call it a bleeding heart project. But let's talk about another project, because I think this is, one of the things that I think is interesting about people from outside of producing countries. So you're originally from Germany, you have a background in tropical agronomy. I believe your training might have been with GTZ, or your work in Bolivia started with GTZ. What you do is you bring to it a sort of different kind of entrepreneurial spirit. So you see these beans, and it took you years to get these little tiny wild beans, to get anybody interested in caring, because none of the machinery, all the machinery is designed around, 1 gram per bean size. And so anything that's really, really tiny requires like really specialized manufacturing techniques, right? It's a real challenge. But you've done that. You're looking at all these other things. But there's this fabulous collaboration for people who want to go and try some of the cacao between Caputo, so Matt Caputo, Caputo's Marketplace, and A Priori, and the guys at Ritual. I believe this bar was made by Ritual, and Your Cacao. So can you tell us a little bit about how this project came together, and how you would describe the way this chocolate tastes? Right. And what's special about it?
Okay. That it goes back to HCP, because Matt Caputo made it happen that the HCP1, HCP2 was genetically tested, because that required some money, and he was sponsoring it 10 years ago. And ever since, I was with Matt Caputo, and he was always fan of the beans, and I distributed the beans throughout the US to several makers. And in the end, I made a bar with Art Pollard, Amano once, but I couldn't keep on, and so Matt came back and said, no, let's do it in a different setup. And he made the approach to Solstice, and now we have a joint venture kind of business. Matt is the platform to distribute and promote the bar. Rituals is doing a very great job in producing the chocolate out of these very tiny beans, and I deliver the best beans I can every year to Solstice.
To Ritual.
Solstice as well, of course. Deanne also get beans from me ever since, I don't know, almost 10 years. You see there is a Tranquilidad bar also from Deanne and Solstice. And there was one also from Letterpress. There were like 5-6 different Tranquilidad bars at a time.
But some of these are also again, this is the Caputo's Marketplace website. Some of these are Alto Beni beans. They're not all Tranquilidad beans.
No, that is all Tranquilidad beans.
This page is all Tranquilidad beans.
Yes. Yes.
So Volker, one of the things I would love to do is let's sit down and talk. Let's sit down and talk with. Let me really quickly. Let's sit down and talk with Matt and see about doing a horizontal tasting of all the Tranquilidad beans, because each one of these chocolate bars is going to taste very different based upon the aesthetic of the maker. So that'd be fun. Let's go talk with Matt about that.
Yeah, exactly. You were asking me about the taste, so I can tell that each and every one, Letterpress, they got a Best Food Award. And Fruition also, they got the Best Food Award, and they are really making, each and every one makes a little bit of a difference in the final product. It varies by the percentage of the liquor, it varies by the roasting and so on, but that is the fun in the specialty in the bean to bar market. That is the fun. You know, even though they get the same beans, they make a different product. And what makes me happy is there are so many customers asking for these beans and for these chocolate. So for me, it's very rewarding. And Matt is actually is doing a give back to Tranquilidad, to the Theo Bromer Foundation, so that we can keep on growing the idea of having an organization and that takes care about the chocolatales and the tennis.
So I want to jump really, really quickly because we've only got about 10 minutes left in the episode. This is actually in Cochabamba. I remember that when I was in Santa Cruz and we drove to La Paz for the Second International Congress in Cacao Fino in the Andean region in November of 2010. So here we are in Cochabamba. So I have a series. So what I did is I posted a series of photographs. By the way, this is coca leaf growing not far from here, right? This is coca drying out in the sun. So it's an important part of the economy still. Bolivia is treating it a little bit different from the way Peru is. But this is at the podium on the Second Congress. This is one of the crowd outdoors. This was an image which was posted by the Peruvian delegation in 2010. And I believe that this would have been at the first Salón del Cacao y Chocolate in Lima, might have been 2009 or something like that. But Colin Gasco, Alan McClure, Art Pollard, Philippe Bernachon, Maricel Presilla, Stefan Bonan, Martin Christie, and Jean-Paul Ervin are in this picture. I just wanted to get you an idea of who's there. I don't recognize all the names, but these are colleagues that I recognize. Um, we had this fabulous visit to the Condor Chocolate Factory on our way out of Lima. This is on the way from Cochabamba up to, I'm sorry, to La Paz, not Lima. On the way to from Cochabamba to La Paz, we're at the near the summit there. This is on the way from La Paz. This is the road of death. This road down here on our way to Coroico and Caranavi in the South Yungas, as you remember. This is Volker's bright yellow Nissan Xterra as a part of that. And here's Volker. And we had a great time on this trip. I can tell everybody, I mean, Volker is the kind of person that if you want to go someplace and have a travel companion, Volker is like one of the best that I have had in the 20 some odd years I've been doing this. You can't tell, but his fingers are on the volume dial of the radio, I think, and we're listening to the Scorpions at 11 as we're driving down. Well, right now he's parked, but we're driving down these roads at about 10 kilometers an hour faster than is probably safe. But it was a fabulous adventure. This is what it looks like. It's breathtakingly beautiful. Everybody, here we are, and we've gone to, this is a gene bank, which is outside of Palos Blancos, right? Up here are the maps again. This is Palos Blancos, the downtown. This is dead center Palos Blancos. Is it looking still like this, Volker, or is it?
No, it's triple the amount of houses. It's totally paved. The town has grown tremendously, and I bought a piece of land on an agriculture plot where I made the harvest center, and now I'm within the boundaries of the city or the town. So you see, everything grew quite tremendously, and as you mentioned the travel, I would like to invite again.
People. That's why I started showing these pictures as a segue, right? Yeah. For everybody who's interested, and I've mentioned this before, Volker, why don't you let people know about what's going on, what we're planning?
Yeah, we were talking this back and forth a couple of years actually, and I was the one who is lacking behind. There was COVID, of course, and I'm building a little eco lodge on Tranquilidad to host people, so people can come and visit. We can make chocolate, all kinds of things, all kinds of activities. So that's my idea, and talking to you, we came up with the idea to make a full revival of our tours, a kind of starting in La Paz, going down, and now it's not anymore the Road of Death. The Road of Death is actually closed, and they made a new one. I think that is much better, but we can still see the Road of Death, and we have a look at. But then we go to Alto Beni, see Flor de Cacao, which is my harvest center, where HCP1 is produced, and we can talk to farmers. There are also a little village from Mossetene indigenous people, and they grow some wild strains still there. So that would be part of it. And then we would go to Trinidad and finally Tranquilidad on the road and experience all the pampas, and you can see a lot of birds. You see crocodiles on the road, everything.
So you can now drive from Trinidad to Bowries?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So things have changed a lot in the last 10 years.
It has changed, and it's a paved road. Formerly it was 12 hours or 2 days, and now we can do it in 4.5 hours, for sure.
Right. So just for everybody to just put a pin in this, so that Volker and I and perhaps also inviting Rowan Jacobson, who is a mutual friend and also another author who has been in this region. We're looking at putting together a trip to Bolivia for January of 2025, right?
Yeah.
Because if the harvest is normal, there will be cacao on the trees in January 2025. Right. The idea is to everybody to fly into La Paz, and then we will go from La Paz, which is down here in the lower left-hand corner. We will travel north out of La Paz through Coroico, Caranavi, and we'll go to Palos Blancos. And Palos Blancos is where the Flor de Cacao is, and we'll have an opportunity to visit the farms, talk to farmers, and engage in activities in Palos Blancos. From there, what do we have to do? We have to go to Ruanabaque in order to fly to Trinidad, or we can fly
straight to Yucumo and Yucumo, Trinidad.
So Yucumo, we fly to Trinidad, and then we'll get in a vehicle, and then we'll drive up to Baures. And the Hacienda Tranquilidad is sort of between Baures and Huacaraje, right?
Yeah.
All right. And so we'll do that. And then when we get done, do you think then there will be the option of either flying from Trinidad to Santa Cruz de la Sierra or flying from Trinidad back to La Paz, and then people will return to the United States. And what I'm going to suggest that we do is that there might be a supplement if people want to do something additional during the time that they're there. But we'd also make part of the fee that's associated with this a donation to the Theobroma Foundation.
Yeah,
right, as well. So it'll be great. It's for me, the last time I was there was November of 2010. So this will be 15 years on. So I think it's, for me, it's just, a fabulous opportunity to visit the country because I haven't been there in so long. And then I think for anybody who is interested in the wild cacao and has an interest in Bolivia as a country, it is unlike every other country in South America that I've been to, Latin America I've been to, and it's really, really a fabulous and interesting place to go, and I'm looking forward to going back. What I will say is, number one, is if you are interested in doing this, and you're in the United States, that you immediately look to see if you can find yourself a tropical medical doctor who can get you a yellow fever shot if you do not have a yellow fever shot. I mean, you will require proof in a yellow WHO vaccination record that you have had your yellow fever, and it can take 3 to 4 months to schedule something like that in the United States. Just really, really important to understand that. It's not like Mexico where I got one next day, but here in the United States. And there are other things. We'll help you through the process. We haven't got the exact itinerary yet. We haven't got the exact date yet. So we don't know what the exact cost of this is going to be. That's something that Volker and I am working on. But if you are interested in doing that, I'll put a link in today's post, but member.support at thechocolatelife.com, and we'll put you on the list. So when we have all of this information, we will get it to you, and you'll be able to join the short list of people who will be able to join. Because I think it's only going to be like 8 to 10 people or something like that, Volker. I don't know how big the Eco Lodge is on the Tranquilidad.
No, 10 people would be, also for the sake of the experience, if the group is too big, it's not working. And also for the sake of the travel, we can't get a big bus. It's like a smaller vehicles. And so I think 10 people, except me, or you, that would work just fine. Also for that everybody really has a good experience and not the crowd is too big.
No, and again, I'm really looking forward to this return, and I really want to make this again, or both Volker and I want to make this a really, really meaningful experience. And there are opportunities. I mean, if you have never had a truly fresh Brazil nut, right, you are in for a treat. I mean, having truly fresh Brazil nuts. We'll stop someplace. I don't know. I mean, I still have memories, Volker, of the afternoon that we spent on the square in Santa Cruz having pique macho and lots of presidentes, I think. Looking forward to having gusanito in wild cacao vinegar, right? Chili peppers and things like that.
So I tried to make some culinary extras while people are in Tranquilidad. I got some aged cacao vinegar. I got some. It's like a syrup. I recently produced cacao syrup, thick, very thick, and it's towards. I would say balsamico feeling you get when you have it. It is there are certain things we could do like a ceviche from a crocodile tail or stuff like that.
I'm game. Right. we had what was it? It was not we didn't have a goody. We had capybara, I think, in Caranavi.
And it was hochi. It was hochi.
Okay.
The agouti.
Oh, it was agouti. Okay. So agouti. I just want to let people know that they're really, really interesting. So not only is the cacao amazing, not only is the landscape amazing, but there are some really, really fabulous culinary opportunities.
Bolivian soups like the peanut butter soup. No, not butter, of course. The peanut soup is very special. I can tell as I come around quite a bit in this world. I think these are very special dishes. Yeah.
Patasca at 5 o'clock in the morning at the bus station in Trinidad. Right. I remember.
It works.
After the overnight bus trip from Santa Cruz to Trinidad. Oh my God. Anyway, it's just a fabulous opportunity.
And what is good, it's a safe country. I would say it's maybe safer than Peru or Colombia or
Ecuador at the moment. Ecuador at the moment is quite unsteady. Yeah.
Yeah, and Bolivia is quite a safe place to go. Also with the food, I never had people food poisoning. It's not like in Mexico where Moctezuma's revenge hit you in no time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I had a freshwater paiche ceviche in Peru, and that's probably the worst example of food poisoning that I've gotten in all of my travels anywhere.
You see.
Related to cocoa. But why would I have a freshwater ceviche? Right? It's like, it was not a good idea. Volker, I'm going to give you the next to the last word here. It's always a pleasure. It's always great to connect with you, find out the new and interesting things that you're working on. And I'm really looking forward to the next couple of months as we're working on putting together this travel program. But what is the highlight, the thing you really want people to take away from this episode of Pod Safe Chocolate today?
It's something like Bolivia is very special in cocoa, and we, as we discussed, you have the wild, and it's very well explored. It's very well established in the culinary world already. That is something very special. Some Brazilians are doing it. Luisa Abraham is doing it now, copying, which I'm very proud that other people following the steps. This is good. This is good for the environment. This is good for the wild cacao strains, which are there are more to be discovered in the Amazon, of course. And on the other hand, these fine flavor cacaos, which are to be found in Alto Beni, from the Trinitario types, which are conserved, which is totally different to Peru or Ecuador, where you have a predominant strain dominating the market. We are really looking to local varieties that the people developed, not in gene banks or other areas. So it's going back a little bit, as Bolivia is always like going back 100 years. And I think we are never at the forefront of anything, and so I think it's worthwhile coming and experience. The people are very nice. Yeah, they're really nice.
Right. I would certainly agree with everything that you've said there. Um, as we head out of today's episode, I do again want to thank you very much, Volker, for being here today.
No,
To
thank you.
remind everyone that this episode of Pod Save Chocolate, like every episode of Pod Save Chocolate, is sponsored by the members of the Chocolate Life. This is the homepage of the Chocolate Life right now. You can go there. The links are active. If you're not currently a member, you can click on this green button. It will say join. I'm logged in, so I can get to my account. You can go there. This is the post for, oops, I don't necessarily need to see this map. This is the post for today's episode with all the resources. There are a couple more resources that will be copied in over the course of the day. I will add information about the travel program and a link to just, hey, I want to be on the list. So as we move forward, we can make sure that you are kept up to date. Go take a look at the photos. This is, from images from my 2 different trips, you get an idea of just how special Bolivia is as a place to go visit. And then to remind everybody as we head out, one thing. If you're on Facebook, I run a big group called Salones Internacionales de Cacao y Chocolate. I founded it in 2013 after I returned from the Salon del Cacao y Chocolate in Lima. We're just shy of 10,000 members. So if you're on Facebook, you want to join this one, help us hit over the 10,000 member mark. If you're watching on YouTube, please like the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. And with that, just a quick reminder as I end many of my episodes is if you're working with chocolate and you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. And I hope if you get nothing else right from this, Volker and I, after me a little more than 2 decades, probably closer to 3 for you, Volker, maybe longer than that, we're still having fun. And we want you, right, to be able to have a connection to a lot of the same things that animate why we get out of bed every day and do the things we do, and that put a smile on our faces and yours.
Yeah, without fun, it's not worthwhile. And so that's it.
Absolutely. And so, Volker, until the next time, everybody, the next time, ciao, everyone. We'll see you soon.
Yeah.